Olympic softball is coming to Oklahoma City. You heard me right. The Olympics are coming to Oklahoma City. I'm Jenny Carlson here, and big news coming out today that Oklahoma City will host part of the canoe competition in the 2028 Olympics, which are being hosted by Los Angeles. But in some surprising news, Oklahoma City is also going to be hosting the softball competition. This is huge. I can't understate that enough. To have two Olympic competitions in Oklahoma City, unbelievable news for the city, for the state, but obviously the softball scene here just has to be head over heels about the fact that Olympic competition in softball will be here in Oklahoma City at Devon Park in 2028. Let's talk a little bit about how this all happened. Ever since LA was awarded the 2028 games, there was a belief that the canoe slalom event might come to Oklahoma City because Los Angeles, like most major cities, does not have a whitewater venue that can host something like canoe slalom. So it was long believed that that event would come to River Sport OKC, that the Oklahoma River facility would host that event. That was made official today in a statement by LA 28, which is the organizing committee for the games in LA. But in that announcement, we also found out that Los Angeles has decided to relocate the softball competition to Oklahoma City as well. Now, everybody in Oklahoma City knows that nowhere has as good a softball facility as Oklahoma City. It has been that way for many years, since the most recent expansion added an upper deck to the stadium, added an improved press area for TV and all sorts of media. It's just risen even higher beyond the rest of the competition. But with the games being in Southern California, a hotbed for softball, obviously people here in Oklahoma know well just how good softball is in the southern part of California. You can start with UCLA, but you can obviously look at the myriad high school and youth programs that have sent fantastic players into the sport of softball all over the country, including here in Oklahoma. Many of the best players that have been on the best teams that we've seen at OU and OSU have been California players. So California as a softball mecca, no doubt about that. When I heard talk, I started to hear some talk from people that, well, maybe LA 28 will send softball to Oklahoma City as well. Thought it seemed like a bit of a pipe dream because obviously there are facilities in Southern California. If it's softball specific, it may not be big enough, but there would surely be baseball facilities that could be converted. That's what we saw when the Olympics were in the 2020 that became 2021 Olympics because of the pandemic. In Tokyo, we saw a converted baseball facility used for softball. I figured that Southern California, with their rich softball roots, would figure out a way to have the softball competition in LA or somewhere in the surrounding area. But today, in the announcement from LA 28, they basically said, listen, we don't have a big enough softball facility. 2,000 seats is the max for a softball specific facility in Southern California. No surprise there. That's pretty big in the world of softball. You don't see many jumbo sized on campus facilities like we have at Oklahoma. You can look at Alabama, Arkansas. There are a few places that start to get into the 4,000 and 5,000, but they're rare. So 2,000 seats for a softball specific facility in LA, not totally surprising. But LA deciding that they just didn't have a facility that they felt like they could convert or wanted to convert to softball to allow for the kind of crowd that they expect. That was something that the announcement from LA 28 mentioned, is that they expect big crowds. As we know, softball in the Olympics has not been consistent ever since they first went into the Olympics in 1996 in those games in Atlanta. Softball had a run of 4 Olympics, I believe it was, and then it got removed from the sport roster. Has been on and off since then. It will return, obviously, in 2028. The host cities can add special designations for sports that may not be on the full roster. And softball was one that LA 28 decided to add. But then, obviously, in looking around, Southern California realized that they did not have anything close to what Oklahoma City offers. Now, this is also a bigger picture view. You can look at this and know that this is a move in the Olympic movement. It's now allowed, the Olympic Committee, International Olympic Committee, has allowed host cities to go outside their city to find facilities to hold down the costs of venues, the cost of running the Olympics, which has continued to increase. I mean, you see in a much larger list of sports that are being held, and if you don't have a facility and you have to build it out of scratch, then is it able to be used? In Southern California, if they decided to build a softball facility that was somewhere in the vicinity of what Oklahoma City has, 8,000, 10,000 seats, my guess is that they could use it for other things. I would be very doubtful that it would be empty a ton of the year or just abandoned entirely. We've seen some Olympic facilities that have gotten to that point. That would not happen to a softball facility in Southern California. I'm very certain of that. But when you're talking about Southern California, you're also talking about very high property prices, just all the variables that come into play when it comes to building massive sport facilities. So LA 28 deciding that was not in the cards for them, and it's now the Olympics are coming to Oklahoma City. It's still a little bit weird to me to say that, to think that, because you think about all the Olympic cities that are out there. Obviously, Paris is about to host this summer's Olympic Games. You know, the cities where the Olympics go are the biggest of the big. They're the international, they're the Mecca, they're, places that people aspire to travel to in their lives. So for Oklahoma City, one of the smaller markets that's probably ever hosted any Olympic event, to have one that we expected in canoe slalom and another that is a bit of a surprise. I talked to a source in City Hall just a little bit ago, exchanged some text messages, and it was a surprise. They did not expect that it would happen quite like this. I'm sure in recent days, as they talked over it, it became more and more clear that it would. But obviously, again, because of the river sport facility that Oklahoma City has invested so heavily in, that was widely expected. But the softball move, definitely not something that I think a lot of people, would have thought was for sure going to happen. So for it to have happened, unbelievable news for Oklahoma City. One last thing on this before we go. This to me is a nod towards generations of Oklahoma City residents who agreed to build things, improve things, and maybe they didn't always quite know where it was going. When you think about the first maps, those sorts of things, what was then the Hall of Fame Stadium is now Devon Park, was built largely by USA Softball and some civic money when it was first built. But over the years, millions of dollars have been invested by, yes, USA Softball, but even more so by taxpayers in Oklahoma City, agreeing again and again to do improvements. Now, at the time, those improvements were done in large part to keep the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City, to make it an event that would put down roots here. And that's largely been what's happened. The NCAA and Oklahoma City have a contract for the Women's College World Series that runs through 2035. So that event is here for the long term, and I wouldn't be surprised if after 2035, that contract gets renewed. I don't know if it's another 15 years, another 20, or if it's something shorter in the 10, but it's going to continue to be renewed because nobody has a facility like Oklahoma City. So to the residents of Oklahoma City, the civic leaders in Oklahoma City who over the years said, this is important, we need to do this, thank you, thank you, thank you. Voters for saying yes, a huge thank you to you, because again, nobody knew what was going to happen, that this would be a possibility. But Oklahoma City had a chance to provide a world-class facility for Olympic softball, and lo and behold, The Olympics are coming to Oklahoma City in 2028. Just huge news. We'll continue to cover it as we get more details. Obviously, we don't know timing just yet, when games will be, all that sort of thing. We're still 4 years away. We got time to get that all figured out. But for now, reason to celebrate for so many people who love softball in Oklahoma City. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.